So you're probably going to ask me, how do you find limiting beliefs then? And I am now going to tell you exactly how. I'm going to give you, first of all, a set of clues that a limiting belief exists. Now, this is the audience participation section of the webinar. Well, kind of. I'm going to show you a word on the screen, and I'm going to ask you to tell me how that word can be used to express a limiting belief. So here is the word, the first word I'm going to show you. It's. I'm going to suggest to you that when people use the word it's, they're quite often expressing a limiting belief. Not always, but quite often. Would anyone in the chat box like to give me a sentence that involves the word it's that expresses a limiting belief? And Amla says, it's true. Yes, perfect. And Space Metal Fantasy, it's hard. And in fact, Releaser 99, it's hard. Alice, yes, it's just how life is. And that perfect answers, perfect answers. When you hear this word it's, quite often what comes next is the limiting belief. There are a set of clues, and I'm going to give you some more now as we go further down this slide. I'm going to give you some more, and you can get quite good at spotting these. When I'm talking to people and I hear these words that I'm going to show you, of which it's is one of them, immediately my ears prick up and I go, aha, there's your limiting belief. So here's another one, a really nice combination. If then or because. Would anyone like to give me a limiting belief expression of if then or because? So I can give you one right now while I'm standing here. If no one responds, then I'm going to look like an idiot. So there's a limiting belief there. Here we are. So Alice has said, if I'm poor, that's because of the government. Excellent. Yes. So that's an implied then. So in that case, what we have is if I'm poor, and then the then is kind of hidden away then. But if I'm poor, that's because of the government. Yes, excellent. Corey, because they did that to me. Yes, excellent. Because they did that to me. Yes, absolutely. Release 99. If I have a deeply ingrained blocking belief, my clearing session will take too long. Perfect. Yes, very, very good one. If I have a deeply ingrained blocking belief, then my clearing session will take too long. And you've expressed very nicely there why I'm trying to shake loose the idea that there is a thing in there called a deeply ingrained blocking belief. Space Metal Fantasy says because it happens to everyone. Yes, again, because it happens to everyone. And because is actually it's a kind of synonym for if. You will quite often see because and if used similarly. So because, and if you put then on the end, like because Joe was nasty to me, then I have to put up with all this nonsense. So then often appears with because as well. So yes, excellent answers, excellent answers. I shall now unveil the next one. And this is going to be an easy one, really, really easy. I am. Does anyone want to give me an I am limiting belief? And it's almost not even a limiting belief. It's an expression of belief. Whenever you say I am, there's almost guaranteed to be a belief after it. So Space Metal Fantasy, I am hopeless. Yes, that's excellent. Release 99, I am not good enough. And Corey, very similar, I am not good enough for this. There you go. The I am, it's such a powerful thing. Nicholas, I am this way. It's just the way I am. What? Two I ams there. I am is such a powerful expression there. When we say I am, we are almost putting everything on the line there. So when you hear I am, and then there's a negative phrase that comes afterwards, Wow, there's a lot of power there. So definitely the I ams are big clues as to a limiting belief existing there. The next one is this little construction here, which is I should, or I can't, or I have to. Would anyone like to give me one of those? Just space metal fantasy? I can't have it all. Yes, absolutely. How many people say I can't? I mean, that's almost as bad as I am in a negative way, because I can't is it's very difficult to sound positive about it. I guess you could say I can't fail, and that would be excellent. But there's always, I don't think it's used in that format too often. Nicholas is saying, I should do this because it's what society says so. Yes, absolutely. I should. And Space Battle Fantasy, I should be different than I am. Yes, let's link them together. Yeah. Why not have yeah, well, why not just link all of these together? If I am awful, then I should suffer because I can't have what I want, and I don't deserve to have it. Yeah, you could really go crazy with this stuff, I guess. And I don't know. I don't know what the ultimate blocking belief would be, but I'm sure we're getting close to it. Uh, Corey says, I have to do what other people tell me to do. Yes, very good. Very good. I think we've got the idea of that one. Now, here we have a slightly different clue that a limiting belief exists, and it's this little construction. Always, never, no one. Would anyone like to give me a limiting belief that expresses those? I'm always standing here in silence, waiting for people to respond. Here we are. Amla, this always happens to me. Yes, absolutely. Alice in Wonderland, no one ever achieved something like this before. Perfect. Perfect. Space Metal Fantasy, no one understands me. Yes, you guys are good. And Nicholas, I should always live by that value no matter what the context. Yes. Corey, everything always stays the same. Yes, perfect, perfect. You can start to see, I hope, these little clues that limiting belief exists, that a limiting belief exists, are not that hard to spot once you get the idea of it. There is a class of limiting belief, though, that is a little more tricky to spot, and it's what we would probably call a disempowering metaphor. So up to now, you can kind of listen to these things as people talk, and every time you hear it's or never or I should or I can't, then you can hear those limiting beliefs. Disempowering metaphors are more advanced as a limiting belief kind of thing. And it's what people who are really good at limiting beliefs hide their limiting beliefs within. So sometimes you have to probe a little bit to see what they're doing here. So if I said to you, well, in fact, before I even tell you what this thing is, would anyone like to have a guess at what a disempowering metaphor is? And Alice says, when it rains, then it pours. Yes, yes, that's very good, very good. It implies well, that's almost an if then actually. If it rains, then it pours. But yes, that's in the right sort of ballpark area. But let's see if we can get an even more disempowering metaphor than that. Would anyone like to have a go? Yeah, Nicholas is saying Murphy's Law. Well, yeah, bad things will happen. Yes, yes. I mean, you could buy into that. It's almost a model of life, isn't it? That something will go wrong. Yeah, that's kind of there. But I'm gonna put you out of your misery. I'm gonna give you one that kind of hints a bit more directly at what I'm getting at here, which is if I say there's no light at the end of this tunnel, that's a disempowering metaphor because it implies, first of all, you're in a tunnel. So not only is there no light at the end of that tunnel, you're actually in a tunnel. You have taken on a mental model in the way that we were talking about earlier that is disempowering. And so I shall suggest to you that another disempowering metaphor is the idea that I spoke about a bit earlier, that there are deeply ingrained blocking beliefs. Okay, I can't be bothered to write all that out. But isn't that a disempowering metaphor? That something is so deeply ingrained into something else that it's going to take a lot of time to pull it out. That's what we're talking about. That kind of idea. Another disempowering metaphor. Well, I think you've got the idea. I mean, I'm not going to spend the whole session talking about this. Now, when you come across these limiting beliefs, is there an immediate sort of way of beating them? Well, there is actually. There are some standard strategies you can use to attack some of these things. And you might even like to try these first before you try any of your normal belief clearing methods. The three kind of approaches you could use is, I'll write them on the screen here. The first one is, how do I know? So if someone says, it's always the case that something bad happens, you could then say, or if that's you, you could say to yourself, well, how do I know it's always the case? How do I know? And that then makes you step back and think a little bit. So similarly, with no one ever likes me, how do I know that no one ever likes me? You could say that, or you could, you could say here, if Joe is nasty to me, then I will get sacked at work. Well, how do I know? And I am always unlucky. Well, how do I know? So how do I know is one approach. Another approach is just to emphasize the word that is the blocking one. So here, this works especially well with this one. If someone says, I always do things wrong, or I never get things right, or no one ever does things for me, you just emphasize the actual words. So for example, if they say, I never get things right, you could emphasize the word never. And then that forces you to step back and think, is that an absolute rule? Never. Or if someone says, I always do this, you emphasize the word always. Always? And then again, you take a step back and you think, okay. Now those two techniques, so they will tackle quite a few sort of these limiting beliefs that come up, and you can try them on yourself. You can try them with other people. The next time a limiting belief comes up in a conversation, you could just say suddenly, and someone says, I never am able to do this. You say never, and then watch how their face kind of contorts as they think of all the times that they've ever done it and whether never actually applies. With a disempowering metaphor, such as no light at the end of the tunnel, a good way to tackle that is actually to get into the metaphor and change it. So at the start of this webinar, I was talking about the metaphor of a deeply ingrained blocking belief, and I was saying how you could spend 30 years getting deeply ingrained in darkness. But now I'm going to shift that metaphor by saying I can just turn on the light. So I've gone from something deeply ingrained, and I've attacked that metaphor at its core and said, turn on the light. And hopefully, if you had that kind of a metaphor running in your mind, just the idea of a light immediately lighting up a room and dispelling 30 years worth of darkness in an instant has now tackled that a little bit. It's loosened up that idea. So hopefully with this slide that I've shown you there, you've got a few clues there about when a blocking belief or a limiting belief exists and when it doesn't.